There's another question that popped up in the comment section asking about stowaways. A stowaway is a person who secretly boards a ship or is hidden inside cargo that is subsequently loaded on a ship without the consent of the ship owner or the ship's master. So, what should the crew do in case they find a stowaway hiding on board their ship? Traditionally, stowaways often seek passage on ships as a means to escape poverty or persecution. Nowadays, another reason why they do it is profit. But we'll get to that later. There are certain countries which are quite infamous for having a high incidence rate of stowaways. Typically, before ships arrive at these ports, they are given advisories in order to prepare themselves and avoid being boarded by stowaways. But even so, a lot of stowaways still manage to come through. Back in 2014, I was on board a ship that was loading cargo in Richards Bay, South Africa. We were there for about 5 days. We were given the standard notice in order to prevent stowaways, and we enforced appropriate security measures. Before departure, we even hired an inspection team with dogs in order to make sure that there were no stowaways on board. We were scheduled to leave port at night, and they conducted their search right before departure. Eventually, they finished the search and reported that all was clear. So after they left the ship, we proceeded with departure operations. Our ship was headed for China, so it was going to be a long voyage. But 2 days after leaving port, around 6 in the morning, I heard some commotion coming from the staircase. I also heard an announcement in the public address system, but I didn't really understand what was said. Initially, I thought there was fighting among the crew, so I went out of my cabin to check it out. In the staircase, I saw one crew member running up carrying a steel pipe. So I asked him what's going on. He said they found a stowaway, and as they were chasing him, he managed to climb up the railings and all the way up the bridge wings. I told him to take it easy and don't use the pipe to hit anyone. So we went up to the bridge where I found the chief mate all alone. I asked him where the stowaway was and he pointed outside the bridge wings. I saw one man lying in a fetal position on the deck. I asked the chief mate if he already talked to him. He said no, because he was waiting for others to come to the bridge. Eventually, the captain and the other crew members arrived on the scene, but no one was volunteering to talk to the stowaway. Me, being the adventurous type, volunteered to go, and I also asked the guy carrying the steel pipe to assist me, just in case things got ugly. So I went out and started talking to the guy. As it turned out, he doesn't speak English, so I resorted to making hand gestures. Initially, what I got from him was that there were 2 of them, so I tried to ask where the other one was. All of a sudden, another guy comes up to the bridge wing, and this one apparently was fluent in English. He went on to recite some obviously scripted narrative, thanking God that we rescued them and all that other stuff. By this time, the other crew members found the courage to go out with us, so we started asking questions. First was, how did they get on board? He said they climbed the ropes just as the search team left. Based on their account, they found a very short window of opportunity between the time that the inspectors left and before the pilot came on board. Also, they said that they somehow managed to get inside the engine room and hid on top of the lube oil tanks. I actually found it strange because we were already in the engine room at that time, preparing for departure. Anyway, their explanations were quite vague and a bit unbelievable. We called the office and asked them what we should do. Since our ship will stop over at Singapore in about 10 days from that time for bunkering and supplies, at first we thought that they could be sent home from there. But the office said that's a difficult process. From Singapore, we were going to China, so sending them off from there was totally out of the question, as the process there would be much more difficult. Eventually, we were instructed to turn the ship around and go back to South Africa, to Durban this time, where the stowaways will be disembarked. Now, a few things to note when encountering stowaways on board a cargo ship. It is very important to treat them humanely. We gave them a spare cabin, but of course we posted some crew members to stand guard and make sure they stay inside the cabin. Never put them to work. I've heard one story years ago, and this was in the 90s. A stowaway was caught on board. What the captain did was put him to work while the ship was underway because he felt that the guy had to earn his keep, as if he was part of the crew. Eventually, he was disembarked when the ship reached port. A few days later, the ship received a complaint that the stowaway was not given wages. So, that's that. And of course, don't even think about throwing them overboard. Besides the fact that that's just plain evil, these stowaways have an organized network. People back in their home know which ship they went to, so if in case they don't come back or there was no news that they were found and sent home, the ship will be reported for suspected foul play. Anyway, our ship arrived at Durban around 2 days later. A boat arrived with some security team and picked up the stowaways from our ship. Later on, the captain told me that the company had to pay around $7,000 for each of the stowaways. This was to ensure their security, general health, welfare, and safety. In reality, this just acts as an incentive that could encourage people to stow away or perhaps to do it again and again, like a business. Like I said earlier, I had my doubts regarding the story that the stowaways we caught were sticking to. When we inspected their bags, we found shore worker uniforms, so I suspect there was definitely some connivance there. Also, the one who didn't speak one word of English was quite wary and a bit nervous to look at. It was probably his first time to do this, while the other one, who was very fluent in English, had an obviously rehearsed line and was quite confident in his demeanor, a confidence that can only be gained by experience. I'd wager it was not his first time doing it. He's what they call a professional stowaway. So, besides the money that was given supposedly for the stowaways, our vessel went on off-hire status from the moment that we turned around and went back to Durban up until we reached the original coordinates of our turning point. So that's about 4 days of off-hire. I've heard stories from other seafarers wherein they found the stowaways after more than a week from leaving port, so it was already too far for them to turn back, and they had no choice but to bring the stowaways with them. Unfortunately, every country that their ship went to refused to process the stowaways. Their companies were forced to spend a lot of money just to send them back home. As per statistics that were published by the International Maritime Organization between 2011 and 2022, there has been a total of 3,200 incidents involving 8,329 stowaways, and the total cost of arranging for their repatriation reached up to $64.7 million. And that doesn't include the cost of off-hire penalties for ships that needed to turn around or divert to disembark the stowaways. Anyway, there have been recent seminars which sought to develop new recommended practices in order to discourage future incidents of stowaways. Hopefully, they implement this soon, as their presence on board ships may bring serious consequences. Their own lives could be endangered, as they might spend several days hidden with the risk of suffocation and without any food or water. Secondary will be for ships and, by extension, to the shipping industry as a whole, as the repatriation of stowaways can be a very complex and costly procedure. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and as always, if you have any maritime-related questions, feel free to ask them in the comment section. Don't forget to hit like, and if you haven't subscribed yet, that would be awesome too. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next one.